You don't have to stand on the shoulder of giants if you reproduce fast enough to climb a mountain of dead bodies. Unknown, referring to the Strevical Dominion. Never forget, it's the second mouse that gets the cheese. On the DRA, Fulton, Mounted Diplomatic Corps. Have mercy on me, oh Hell Queen. Hell Queen.
No.
Worse. It's just me, the detainee, in the flesh. Unlike the Hell Queen, I am not known for my mercy. It isn't fair. I didn't do anything to deserve this. My dog didn't deserve to get eaten by a bunch of Okies, but here we are. Conversation between the detainee and a hellbound soul. The macroplas squealed as the thick round tentacles squirmed against it, rubbing over it, leaving behind thick trails of clear slime. The ends of the tentacles, sometimes blunt, sometimes with spikes, probed at the edges slowly. Occasionally the tentacle would somehow unroll, showing a flat surface covered with thick ridged suckers, often with curved spikes of cartilage. Those squealed across the macroplas at a higher pitch, but never left anything behind but slime. The 2 DRA Fulton was sitting next to one of the interior walls. The female soldier had unbuttoned her top and dropped it to her waist. She sat in front of the male, who was busy pawing at her fur, grooming her silently, as both of them bruxed their back teeth in anxiety. Now and then the male would lean slightly forward, resting his head on her shoulder. She would reach up and stroke his fur from between his ears, down his muzzle, to his nose, making soft noises of reassurance. The Strevical soldier was sitting in front of the window, staring out at the tentacles. He neither moved nor spoke, just sat silently, hardly blinking, as if the tentacles would give up and go away if he just stared long and hard enough. The Strevical scientist was busy pulling apart what Unvarak had determined was some kind of pay point. The case was cracked open, the guts torn out, and the Strevical scientist was categorizing the tiny microchip-laden boards by size and by other criteria that Unvarak neither knew or cared about. Unvarak himself sat on a dusty seat, the plas cover stiff and crackling with movement, the padding reduced to rock hardness by age. But it beat sitting on the floor. The Dremkilia sat next to him, staring at the blank ceiling, humming contentedly to itself as he rocked back and forth slightly. Unvarak looked at his hands for a long moment, then turned to the Dremkilia. "How long have we been here?" he asked. The Dremkilia closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. "Inside this room?"
6 hours, 19 minutes, 17 seconds when you asked.
"On this planet?" 29 hours, 42 minutes, 11 seconds when you asked. Unvarak nodded. "How does he know? Does he have cyberware to tell him?" The DRA Fulton soldier asked. "I have a calendar clock on my implant, but it is flashing error. He is a Dremkilia. They are nearly as accurate as an atomic clock when it comes to timekeeping," Unvarak said. The Way of the Means soldier frowned, but nodded. The male scientist started grooming her ears, and she leaned back, sighing. "How far did we travel in total?" Unvarak asked. "We traveled in a straight line for 16 miles, then turned and traveled another 3 miles until we arrived here," the Dremkilia smiled. "Thank you," Unvarak said. "I helped," the Dremkilia said, his smile getting broader. Yes, you did," Unvarak said. He looked down at the debris at his feet. "That brings up something else." "What?" the Way of the Means soldier asked. She reached back and patted the scientist on the chest. "Pay attention. I have not felt the need to urinate or move my bowels. I do not feel hungry, nor do I feel much fatigue," Unvarak said. "Has anyone else had a different experience?" The Dremkilia shook his head before anyone else. "We all closed our eyes and rested," Unvarak said. He looked at the Dremkilia. "How long did we sleep?" 91 minutes. Each person slept fully for 10 to 20 minutes, then woke for 60 to 90 seconds, before sleeping again, the Dremkillia said. Unvarak nodded, and we all entered rapid eye movement sleep almost immediately. As soon as it ended, we woke up slightly, then fell back asleep and went back into REM sleep. Unvarak looked at his hands. We only dream for the first 5 to 20 minutes of sleep for neurological reasons. Then we sleep to purge toxins from our systems, he said. He looked up. We only entered REM sleep repeatedly, yet I feel no side effects from toxin buildup. The others looked around, then shrugged. The Strevical scientist went back to using a flattened piece of scrap metal to peel the chips off of the circuit board. Maybe we are in the afterlife, suffering punishment for our actions in life, the Strevical soldier said, without looking away from the squirming tentacles. That Terra, she is known as the Matron of the Damned, the Lady Lord of Hell, who punishes Terra, fallen Confederacy, and lost Council souls for their sins in life. How do you know this? The DRA Fulton scientist asked, smoothing the way of the Means trooper's fur with the blunt tips of his claws. The soldier shrugged. After my terrible experience, I researched everything I could, searching for answers. I discovered the Matron of the Damned during my research. I put it aside as a myth, a legend to explain things that the Terror did not understand, like the prevailing theory of religion states. The tentacles made a low, drawn-out squealing noise as they squirmed on the macroplas, and the Strevical soldier just continued to stare at it. I had hoped it would help me, the soldier said softly. It did not. Silence fell as Unvarak looked at his hands again. He remembered tripping repeatedly while climbing the mounds of rubble that had been skyrakers, but there was no markings on his hands. He went over the day, going over the memory of after the fight between the Terrors. He got up and moved around, picking up a piece of debris, then moving over to sit down again. He took a few deep breaths to steady himself, then squeezed the piece of metal in his hand. Taking another deep breath, he closed his eyes, held his breath, and yanked the piece of metal out of his hand. It gashed his palm pad deeply. Blood immediately bubbled up, thick and purple, pouring into the fur around the palm pad. "What are you doing?" the DRA Fulton scientists asked, standing up. "Why?" The Dremkillia's eyes were wide with shock. "Wait," Unvarak said. Before he was done with the word, the blood got a strange silvery sheen. The pain receded. Then it looked as if frost was covering it. Then it had a bubbled and thick silverish-grey covering. The pain was absent completely. There was a slight tugging feeling, strange and unfamiliar, across his palm pad. Then the silverish coating began to fizz and steam. It evaporated, leaving behind unmarred flesh. Unvarak nodded. "As I suspected." "What? How?" the Way of the Means troop asked. "The mist. Something else," Unvarak said. "We have known that Terror and Fallen Confederacy mastery of nanites far surpasses anything that our three nations are capable of." Unvarak tapped his palm pad. "Not even a twinge of pain. It has been theorized that they can make many different types of nanites that we have not even considered, and use those nanites to accomplish things we would think were impossible. Nanny spray is good on cuts, but you aren't supposed to use too much of it," the Dremkillia smiled. Unvarak nodded. "We all have medical nanites, small enough to move through the larger veins, able to repair tissue damage, but all of them are modified viruses." He looked at the piece of metal. There had been a smear of blood on the end, but now it was clean, gleaming, despite having been a greyish color due to oxidation. "That means that they need to be held in stasis before use," he pointed at the fog. "Terra nanites are believed to be mechanical in nature, thus they can exist outside of stasis solution, ready for use at an instant's notice." "But why were you willing to cut yourself?" the DRA Fulton scientist asked. "The Terrors suffered terrible wounds in that battle we witnessed," Unvarak said. Most of the others nodded. The Strevical scientist was busy putting things back together in what looked like a random order. The ones that were not immediately killed had their wounds first stopped bleeding, then covered with what looked like foamed aluminum, then seemed to regain strength. He looked at his hand again. I scraped my hands and knees several times crawling up the rubble piles, he said. He tapped a hole in the left knee of his coveralls. Yet my skin is unmarred, even my fur is back. The others nodded, although the Strevical soldier was back to staring out the window. I theorized, and now have more proof to support my theory, that something was healing up wounds. Some outside force, Unverak said. He held his palm out. Perhaps even an inside force. What do you mean? The way of the means soldier asked. If it is Terra nanites, we've been inhaling them the entire time. My leading theory is that the fog is laden with trillions of nanites per breath, that now they are through our bloodstream, in our tissues, and heal our injuries, cleanse away toxins, perhaps even destroy harmful bacteria and viruses in our body, Unverak said. He dropped his arm and turned up his palm so he could look at his hand. How my injury rapidly healed is more evidence that suggests, does not prove but suggests, that the theory may be correct. If it matters, the Strevical soldier said softly, any discovery made through evidentiary processes could help us determine what the detainee wishes us to accomplish as well as may help us survive, Unverak said. Didn't help that poor bastard, the Strevical soldier said, pointing at the base of the window. A terror lay there, the tentacles rubbing all over him, but the terror didn't move. Unverak moved up and looked closely. Why didn't the tentacles pull him away? Maybe it isn't hungry any more, the Strevical soldier said. I am Unverak, he said. The soldier shrugged. If you say so. Might I know you name? Unverak asked. Rifleman First Class, retired Ch.22, the Strevical said. He tilted his head back, flicking his ears backwards. I do not know the name of trash. Unverak nodded and looked at the two DRA. Fulton. Senior Experimenter Hreckel, the DRA. Fulton scientist said. Senior Agent Ilyu, the Way of the Means soldier said. You may call me Lou. Unverak looked at the scientist. Taskapak 88542, the scientist said, twisting the small microcell to get it to press into the board. Unverak looked at the Dremkilia. Quillick, the Dremkilia said, getting to his feet. He puffed out his chest. Minor 6th Class, Certified Laser and Mechanical Drill and Jackhammer Operator, Certified Sonic Jackhammer Operator, Certified or Hauler Operator, Certified Rock Crusher Operator, Certified or Processor Operator, Certified Mining Cartographer and Surveyor with or Discovery Certificates, Certified Self-Supervisory Capable Mining Operations, Low-Yield Explosive Charge Demolition Certification, Vacuum and Hazardous Area Suit Certified, Zero-Gravity Mining Certified, he smiled widely. Father of 9 children, top 10,000 rating with the population selection system. Double rations for life winner. Unverak looked suitably impressed. The sirens suddenly changed pitched. Instead making the slow oscillation in tone, it suddenly began making 3 low tones followed by 3 higher tones, each spaced by a half-second. Look, the soldier Shrokia called out. Unverak turned just in time to see the tentacles whip away. He moved up to the window and looked down to see if he could see the tentacles perhaps pulling away the corpse of the terror. The fog suddenly went a dark crimson with brighter crimson tendrils in it. There was an odd feeling that made Unverak's fur stand up on the side of his body toward the window. The slime glimmered and vanished. The body of the terror suddenly dissolved, leaving behind only an intact skeleton, only the slightly yellowish greasy look to them differentiating it from the other skeletons that Unverak had seen. The fog turned sickly yellow. The siren turned off. The Strevical soldier, Shrokia, stood up, brushing his hands off on his pant legs. We should get moving again, he said. Unvarak nodded silently, staring at the skeleton. How is most likely biological waste recovery? Who is obviously the terrors? The what is most likely advanced nanite technology? Where is right in front of me, all around me? Unvarak thought to himself. Now I just need why, beyond the desire to keep down biological hazards. He looked at the window. No, it's more than that. We're ready, the DRA Fulton Way of the mean soldier said. Unvarak turned around and followed the others to the door, which the Dremkilia was helping the DRA Fulton scientist clear. The Strevikal scientist was messing with the junk in his hands, and although the Strevikal soldier got an angry glint in his eyes, he didn't say anything. Once the debris was clear, the DRA Fulton soldier opened the door, checked both ways, and led the group through the hallway to the door at the end of the hallway on the left. "Ready?" she asked. Everyone just nodded. She pushed in the door. The fog poured in, tendrils exploring first, winding around everyone, then billowing out in a cloud. They followed one another into the glowing yellowish fog.